right now, I just want to stay healthy and I want to just get back into football right now.
How much you missed it?
It's my life.
The NFL has allowed coaches back into team facilities, so I'm back in the studio with my focus on the 2020 NFL season. I always like to break out of this post-NFL draft summertime funk with my opinion on breakout players for the upcoming fantasy football season. We are living in strange times where a virus has the potential to be the biggest X factor in fantasy football, but I promise you that I will keep the mentions of COVID-19 to a bare minimum. However, if we try to ignore factoring the coronavirus into our fantasy football season this year, it's going to be a recipe for failure. For example, Ezekiel Elliott and other Cowboys and Texans players testing positive in June has its pros and its cons to it. The pros are that it allows them to develop antibodies, get a head start on recovering their lung capacity, and I'm not a doctor, but they likely won't miss time during the NFL season from contracting the virus in season. The con is that immunity and a 100% recovery is not guaranteed. Personally, I think that with the best medical care that money can buy, you can elevate players that have fully recovered from the coronavirus slightly over guys that may not have had a positive diagnosis yet. Because let's be honest, these NFL players are not like us regular folk, and the severity that this virus has on them will probably be to a much lesser degree than the general public. But anyways, I'm doing something kind of new here on the channel and bringing you a guaranteed 4-part series here, so please don't let these videos flop. We're obviously starting with the running backs, then episode 2 will be the wide receivers, episode 3 will be the quarterbacks, and then finally the tight ends. The goal for this series is 1,000 likes on each video. If we can hit 1,000 likes on all 4 of these, I'll do a bonus episode for the defensive side of the ball. And I know that there's been a lot of stuff going on in the world lately, and you likely clicked on this video for a brief distraction from everything, so I'm not going to address that until the very end of this video. But as a biracial member of this society, I feel compelled to use my platform to share my unique perspective, but I do hope that you'll check that out and then keep the comment section civil. I'll also explain where I've been for the last month or so.
I think I got my swagger back.
But for the people that just want the football, let's jump right in with number 10 so you can see how this is going to go down, and then I'm going to offer up some honorable mentions and my definition of a breakout player. At number 10, I've got Pittsburgh Steelers running back Benny Snell. As a lover of scouting and the NFL draft, the Steelers are one of those organizations that I love to watch reload a championship contending roster every few years. Draft Twitter loves the infamous wide receiver mold for the Steelers, as do I, but they have also shown a trend of taking a big college running back and getting them prepped for their second year in the league to carry more of the load, while shedding a bunch of weight to gain a little bit of speed. Le'Veon Bell and James Conner are both examples of this, and I believe that Benny Snell is the next in line for this RB1 ascension. Benny Snell is a classic Steelers running back. He's bruising by nature, and he comes with bags of confidence and a spinning rim mouthpiece. Yeah, in his rookie season, he had 426 rushing yards, which isn't anything to write home about, but in the 5 games where he had at least 15 carries, Benny Snell averaged almost 75 yards per game at 4.2 yards per carry. Still not impressed, huh? Man, you guys are going to be a tough crowd. Well, in those 5 games, the Steelers went 4-1, and I know that you guys are here for fantasy football projections, not the Steelers projections. You don't care how they do, but this projects well to the team having confidence in Snell and therefore increasing the odds of Snell supplanting James Conner as the starting running back. Speaking of James Conner, he stepped in for Lev Bell during his vacation season and made Le'Veon Bell irrelevant. The offense was clicking and he was producing on an RB1 level, but failed to follow that season up with another. And if you want to be an every down running back in the NFL, you need to be reliable and consistent. I don't want to sound insensitive bringing it up, and I know it's a cliche to reference every time they're brought up, like commentators asking if you knew that Antonio Gates played basketball or Julian Edelman was a college quarterback, but after seeing how the cancer treatment left a guy like Eric Berry brittle and broken down, I think it's fair to be concerned with the long-term health of James Conner. In 2 years, he's missed 9 games and has a history of lower body injuries. Another reason that Conner struggled in 2019 is due to the revolving door at quarterback. When he was healthy, defenses still were able to stack 8-9 men in the box. The Steelers are getting Ben Roethlisberger back this year, but we'll have to wait and see if that old body of his can hold up for 16 games. If it can, this offense has a chance to restore some balance on the Steelers team before they revert back to being mostly a defensive-minded team. Either way, I think that there's been a shift in mentality in Pittsburgh. This could be the first year that Mike Tomlin goes in and changes the philosophy of this team back to the steel curtain ways with more of a ball control, ground and pound offense, and letting the defense suffocate these finesse offenses. The reason that I'm so high on Snell and not just chalking up the Steelers as another running back by committee backfield is because of the volume that I expect Snell to eventually get. The running back by committee backfield, it's just not what Mike Tomlin wants to do. He believes in having a bell cow running back, and I get it. It's an old school mentality that I can appreciate. If you want the carries, you've got to earn them, right? But we're going to put faith in our starting running back to get it done. I predict that by mid-season, it will be Benny Snell starting and James Conner being the backup, with Anthony McFarland, the rookie, as a developmental pass-catching running back and third down guy. If Conner can't be the lead guy due to nagging injuries, he is better suited as almost an inactive backup and allowing McFarland to offer the big play ability as the change of pace guy that Benny Snell might lack. It's never wise to predict injuries, but Conner is as close to a sure bet as there is if he's receiving the volume necessary to be an RB1. Before we get too deep with the running backs, I always like to define a breakout player in my eyes. But if you don't care about my definition of this, that's cool too. But I like to be thorough with my videos so that everybody can understand my perspective to the best of my ability to communicate it. You can always skip ahead to number 9 if you want. Hopefully I remember to put the time on the screen here. And a pro tip, if you didn't know this already, if you're watching on a mobile device, you can double tap on the right side of the screen to skip ahead 10 seconds. But alright, first off, I don't consider rookies for this list. I know that this is for some reason controversial for some people, but rookies that perform to a higher degree than their peers makes them more of an instant impact guy, but breaking out means that a player has been put into a box based on expectations, previous performances, and overall potential. While in this box, they begin to receive certain labels like underachiever or even sometimes bust.
I think he's a bust.
Getting out of that box requires a performance that exceeds previous production and impact. Plus, everyone is already anointing Clyde Edwards-Helaire as the RB1 of all the rookies, and how many rookies can you really have on a list like this? Let's do 3 honorable mentions now, and a few more that I will save right before my number 1 guy. So first up, Sony Michel. He's gonna get a lot of volume this year, but I don't trust Belichick running backs. He is a legit fantasy football troll. I don't even want to spend that much time on him. I do think that Sony Michel has got a high potential here, but I just don't trust Belichick. After that, I've got Marlon Mack, and I've been slandering Marlon Mack and pushing for the Colts to draft a legitimate running back for ages, and now they have. But it's a season where I'm going to be a little bit skeptical of the rookie impact. So Jonathan Taylor might be put on ice for the back half of the season, but Marlon Mack might be too injury prone to make it through a month of football if he hasn't been training well on his own. Another X factor in this season that is going to have a major impact. The value where you'll be able to get Mack though versus the production potential makes him an intriguing player in fantasy draft, but he gets a double minus for me with the risk that prevents him from making this list. And then the third honorable mention here before we move on is Darrell Henderson Jr. Similar to the Marlon Mack situation, he burned a lot of people that assumed Todd Gurley wasn't going to play much in 2019, and then they drafted Cam Akers. I do think that the Rams could have a bounce back season. I just don't trust Darrell Henderson just yet. And my formula for picking these running backs, it's a very complicated one. It's a little bit of their 2020 value versus their ADP versus the likelihood of their volume versus the draft capital that the team may have spent on a rookie running back. My resume for this, so that I'm not just some random guy in his basement trying to make videos telling you who to pick. I did win 5 out of 8 fantasy leagues last year, and I was recommending Derrick Henry while all the other experts were telling you to sell on him. So it might look like I went out on a limb with a few of these guys, but the order doesn't rank them in terms of overall production. But I would love to hear what you guys think about this. I apologize for all the football foreplay here, but it's been a while for me, and you know I like to be as transparent as possible for you guys. No more distractions. Let's run through the rest of these breakout running backs. At number 9, I've got Tampa Bay running back Ronald Jones. The Bucs did spend a 3rd round pick on Keyshawn Vaughn out of Vanderbilt. He was drafted to be the pass catching style running back that Tom Brady really seems to favor, but the Bucs drafting Vaughn doesn't mean that they have completely given up on their 2018 2nd round pick Ronald Jones. In fact, Bruce Arians has already said that the job is Jones's to lose. Now, Ronald Jones's career got off to about as rough of a start as you can imagine, so it is easy to dismiss him. In 9 games as a rookie, he had 23 rushes for a measly 1.9 yards per carry. But in 2019, he played in all 16 games. He split carries with Peyton Barber, who is now at the Redskins, started the final 9 games of the season, and played pretty well there. Overall, he led the Bucs in rushing in 2019 with 724 rushing yards. He added 31 receptions and totaled over 1,000 yards from scrimmage. Ronald Jones has been a liability in pass protection going back to his days at USC, and was a reason that he got benched in the 2019 season at one point. And that could be the main factor that could allow Keyshawn Vaughn to separate himself from Jones, getting the long-term bulk of the offensive snaps. Bruce Arians' offense is a complex one though, and while Vaughn might be a more natural pass blocker, he could also be a great virtual learner and nail the entire playbook down over these Zoom meetings like a seasoned vet. But it's more likely that without the physical reps this offseason, the learning curve for him might be too steep for Vaughn to take over early on. My best bet for Vaughn is that he's going to be a weapon saved for that late season push and playoff run. Fresh legs from a rookie running back have proven to be crucial down the stretch, especially in a scenario with a 42-year-old running back that might be starting to wear down. My ideal fantasy ownership for Ronald Jones would be to draft him in the 7th or 8th round, let him be a steal in the flex spot or even as your RB2 maybe on most weeks, then possibly trade him right before the trade deadline for someone with nice fantasy playoff matchups. The BUCS are also rumored to have interest in Devontae Freeman, so obviously this optimism for Ronald Jones would sour if the ex-Falcon was added to the backfield here. At number 8, I've got Austin Ekeler of the Los Angeles Chargers. And getting the Chargers to move on from Melvin Gordon was about as much of a ringing endorsement as you're going to get in the NFL. And a lot of people are going to say that Austin Ekeler broke out last year, but in my opinion, now that Austin Ekeler is officially the guy, he has to prove that he's not just a third down back and that he can catch, but also consistently carry the ball on first and second down between the tackles. This is one of the situations where that complex formula comes into play. Ekeler technically only started 8 games in 2019, yet had 1,500 total yards last year, with almost 1,000 of those coming through the air. And that was with Phillip, aka Uncle Rico Rivers, throwing him the ball. Tyrod Taylor will probably be the starter for the most of 2020, and during his time with Anthony Lynn in Buffalo, he really used a conservative approach and loved to check down to his running back. In fact, over 70% of his passes were completed to running backs. That means that Austin Ekeler could shatter running back receiving records with 16 total starts. But it's the effect that a mobile quarterback traditionally has on the running game that gets me excited for Ekeler's potential in 2020. I personally first noticed this back in the day with Mike Vick's Falcons. It seemed like any running back found gaping holes to run through because the defense was so worried about getting beat by a dynamic quarterback. Obviously, Tyrod is no Vick, but look at the mobile quarterbacks to follow Vick since then. The running backs almost always eat, even if the wide receivers have to go hungry. If you give a home run hitter like Ekeler a mobile quarterback to play with, he could easily take another step forward as the main running back in this offense. Ekeler is the guy everyone is telling you not to draft this year because of where you'll need to take him. And I don't discredit their reasoning based on a potential crowded backfield or thinking that this offense is going to be bad because they'll likely be itching to put in Justin Herbert at some point, and then the fact that rookie struggles have on an offense is pretty bad news for everybody on the offense. But if Tyrod is able to hold off the rookie because it's a weird year, and then you extrapolate the first 5 games for Ekeler in 2019 over a 16-game season, which includes the 4 games that Melvin Gordon held out, plus his 1 game back where Ekeler was still the featured guy, then we are looking at video game numbers for a running back on Alex Smith's Madden franchise. A 95% catch rate would be insane, yet somewhat believable considering he finished 2019 with an 85% catch rate. In fact, the stat line looks very realistic in comparison to his 2019 numbers. When it comes down to it, Austin Ekeler might not have a LaDainian Tomlinson type of season, and he might not be worth the high draft pick that it's going to take to get him. But if he falls in your lap and he ends up being maybe your second running back, the potential is there for him to be really good, and if not, he's always really good trade bait. At number 7, I've got the Chicago Bears running back, David Montgomery. At first, I had Tariq Cohen on this list over Montgomery, and then I took him off and I added Monty as a honorable mention. Then I slept on it for a few days, continued to look at the stats, the numbers, the bulk of the carries. So Cohen isn't going to have a chance at the rushing touches to actually break out like an Austin Ekeler, but David Montgomery is a skilled pass catcher, so he has the chance to make Tariq Cohen kind of an afterthought in this offense, but only if the quarterback position can offer some consistency and stability. And this all comes down to which side of the fence do you want to sit on when looking at the Bears in 2020? Are we going to get Matt Nagy from 2018 or Matt Nagy from 2019? Is Montgomery really going to get the bulk of the carries and rushing touchdowns versus Tariq Cohen getting the receptions? And which quarterback are they going to even start from day one? Is it going to be Trubisky or Foles? David Montgomery was drafted to be the man, but I just have my reservations about the stability of this offense as a whole. So in my opinion, I would stay away from the Bears running backs, but I couldn't avoid the fact that David Montgomery is blessed with a grand opportunity. Now he just needs to take advantage of it. At number 6, I've got the Detroit Lions running back, KERRYON Johnson. The argument here against KERRYON is pretty obvious, right? The Lions didn't spend a second-round pick on DeAndre Swift to not play him. I already hear it in the comments. Well, Mr. Short-Sighted Fantasy Football Guy, maybe you forgot the Lions spent a second-rounder on KERRYON Johnson only a couple years ago, and we've already seen him perform as an RB1 when healthy. KERRYON Johnson and DeAndre Swift are not so different in skill sets, so I think that the Lions are just going to let the healthiest man win, and these two can just duke it out for the starting spot. But the elephant in the room that keeps on factoring into these breakdowns is that veteran presence and the familiarity with the offense, the team facilities, and etc. All of that stuff that might be the difference maker in this competition. And let's not forget that when you name your fantasy team after a specific player, you can develop a little connection to that guy, right? Especially if you win a championship that year. KERRYON My Wayward Son will forever be a classic, so maybe this is wishful thinking that he's not already being replaced by a second round pick, but I'm trusting my eyes on this one. Judging KERRYON Johnson and DeAndre Swift as college prospects, I'd lean lean slightly towards DeAndre Swift as who I would have viewed as a superior player or graded higher coming out of college, but that could be recency bias, and I'm just not really big on Auburn running backs because they always seem to flame out in the NFL. Well, the limited action that we've seen from KERRYON Johnson is way better than I expected coming out of college, and I'm not sure if I even expect DeAndre Swift to ever be an every down running back quite like him. So I like the idea of KERRYON staying healthy for the most part, and hopefully that this pick was more of a motivational pick for him. But overall, it was a very strange move personnel wise, especially with the amount of holes that the Lions had to fill. So I could be reading this one completely wrong, and maybe the Lions see DeAndre Swift as the next big thing, but I'm not letting go of my pet cat KERRYON Johnson. At number 5, we've got the San Francisco 49ers. It's pretty safe to say that a Shanahan running back is going to produce like an RB1 almost every season. The trick is figuring out which one. At least the departure of Matt Breida narrows the running back chart down to Tevin Coleman, Jerick McKinnon, Raheem Mostert, Jeff Wilson Jr. So consider this number 5 selection to be a breakout running back by committee pick because Shanahan running backs are never as predictable as they seem. But if you're going to force me to pick a guy, I'm going with Raheem Mostert. He was the leading rusher on the number 2 rushing offense last year, so he gets the nod as the most likely guy to carry the momentum that he finished 2019 with. And overall, I just think that he passed the eye test. He's got that undrafted free agent work ethic, and that's going to be beneficial in times like this where players are going to need to push themselves and hold them accountable for their health and their training. Tevin Coleman has always been one of my favorite running back prospects ever since Indiana, and I always thought that he was going to be a star once he got a shot, and this Shanahan-Coleman reunion seemed like a perfect match. But Mostert and Coleman received a similar workload last year, yet Mostert outgained Coleman by 228 yards and 2 more touchdowns. The 49ers added former All-Pro left tackle Trent Williams to replace retired offensive tackle Joe Staley, and while he's an upgrade over the field or the other options that they had to replace Staley with, we'll have to wait and see if a rusty Trent Williams is actually an improvement over Joe Staley. I think that he can be, but it's just a weird year to be coming off of a Le'Veon Bell. Mostert only had more than 14 carries one time in 2019 also, so let's see how he holds up coming into 2020 as the lead guy. At number 4, I've got the Buffalo Bills running back Devin Singletary. Singletary was dynamic behind Frank Gore as a rookie, and now the everlasting running back has moved on to yet another team, which opens the door for Singletary to get the bulk of the carries. He averaged 12 carries per game last year and made the most of his opportunities, but only had 2 rushing touchdowns as a rookie. That led the Buffalo Bills to drafting Utah running back Zach Moss, who is more likely to get the goal line carries, and ideally will fill that Frank Gore role for the Buffalo Bills in 2020. But I still think that Devin Singletary is a superior prospect and offers a lot more big game potential than Moss does, but the hesitation here is definitely going to be those goal line carries. So it's going to be on Devin Singletary to go ahead and score from 20-30 yards out instead of getting tackled inside the 5 and allowing Zach Moss to come in and leech his touchdowns. At number 3, I've got the Philadelphia Eagles running back Miles Sanders. By the end of last year, the Eagles were lining up practice squad guys at wide receiver, yet Miles Sanders was out there killing it for them. The Eagles did invest heavily in upgrading their wide receiver core this offseason. The offense as a whole should be clicking more efficiently, which is a scary thought to think of for Miles Sanders. And if Deshaun Jackson stays healthy, defenses will not be able to stack the box. Jordan Howard is also now gone, and Miles Sanders put up pretty good numbers despite not playing much until week 13. My only concern with Miles Sanders is that the Eagles will likely add a veteran running back right before the season and frustrate everyone that spends an early draft pick on Miles Sanders. So draft with caution and be patient. If it's Devontae Freeman, be concerned, but if it's someone washed like Jay Ajayi, place a high value on Sanders. At number 2, I've got everyone's darling Arizona Cardinals running back Kenyan Drake. After being a popular breakout candidate in 2019 for the Dolphins, Kenyan Drake was part of the Miami fire sale and found himself a new home in Arizona that was more accommodating to his skill set anyways. After joining the Cardinals, Kenyan Drake was the 3rd most productive running back in the league. He was so good that his performance earned him the transition tag from the Cardinals, and that gave him a nice raise, but you know he's going to be looking for that long-term contract. With David Johnson out and DeAndre Hopkins in, what a terrible trade for the Texans, by the way. This offense is setting up nicely for Drake to have a huge 2020 season. Defenses are really going to be focused on the passing game, allowing Drake to see fewer men in the box, while also allowing him to be a check down option for Kyler Murray in the passing game. Cardinals waited until the 7th round to select local product Eno Benjamin, and I felt like that was a steal for Benjamin, but it's most likely that Eno is just a prospect to keep on ice, so the cupboard isn't empty in the event that Drake isn't brought back in 2021. And I also look at the front office waiting until the 7th to select a running back was such a ringing endorsement of Kenyan Drake. But Drake I see a lot like Austin Eckler in that you're going to have to use a high draft pick to get him, but if he falls into your lap and you're feeling good about him too, then I would take him and feel confident that he is going to respond well in 2020. All right, now I'll go over a couple more honorable mentions. I won't go into too much detail, and I'll also give a couple instant impact rookie candidates. For the Seahawks, I've got either Rashad Penny or Travis Homer maybe, because it seems like Chris Carson's always trying to be replaced, but yet then comes out and just sort of produces. I've got a guy that I'm probably going to get yelled at a lot in the comments for not having on this list, but I wanted to mention him anyways, and that's Raiders last year's first round pick, Josh Jacobs. I felt like he already had a pretty good instant impact as a rookie. He was a first round pick. Kind of don't see him as a breakout because I don't really see him becoming that much better than what we've already seen. Chiefs running back Damian Williams has potential to come in as the veteran, get the bulk of the carries early on, and therefore could have the breakout that we all kind of thought that he would have last year. Plus, he's going to be a super duper value pick because of where people are going to be selecting Clyde Edwards-Helaire versus where they're going to be selecting Damian Williams in drafts. And then Bengals running back Joe Mixon is a nice option. He kind of had a big impact last year. If not for the rookie quarterback struggles that could potentially be ahead of them, he would probably be on this list somewhere. And then Vikings running back Alex Madison. I mean, we don't really know what's going to happen. I don't think that the Vikings will trade Dalvin Cook, at least they shouldn't, but the potential is there. And if that's the case, they actually move on him, then Alex Madison is going to be vaulted into the #1 running spot for them and has looked like a diet Dalvin Cook in the past. So keep an eye on that situation. And then the 3 impact rookies that I could see jumping up and stealing the spotlight from a veteran that I've already mentioned in this video is going to be Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Jonathan Taylor, and DeAndre Swift. And that leaves #1 going to Redskins running back Darius Geis.
How can you call somebody injury prone that's had one big injury? Do y'all know what injury prone means? I had one big injury. So man, kiss it. That's how I'm feeling right now, man. That's how I'm feeling.
Darius Geis came back from a torn ACL to flash in the limited action that we saw from him in 2019. In 5 games, he had 245 yards and 2 touchdowns on only 42 carries. That's 5.8 yards per carry. Geis was playing behind Adrian Peterson, who the Redskins were wisely milking the miles from in just a wasted season. But the game where he went off for 130 yards and 2 touchdowns was against the defense of his new head coach in Carolina. So when it comes down to sifting through the Redskins crowded backfield, I think it's safe to say that Darius Geis is going to have Ron Rivera on Team Geis. However, Geis is running out of spaces on his draft bust bingo card that could hold him back from producing in 2020. From torn ACL to all the nagging injuries last year, and Adrian Peterson finding the fountain of youth, there just haven't been really an opportunity for him to produce consistently. But he's the best running back on this list, and he's on a team that is going to be looking to establish a new identity in 2020. Jay Gruden was always a pass-first guy, and his comments on the running back rotation, despite their ignorance, they provided some insight as to how disconnected this front office was from the coaching staff. However, now it seems like they may have found a coaching staff and have set up better to reflect the structure of this football team, and employing a downhill punishing running back like Darius Geis as the heart of the offense is probably where they start. They've got to give Dwayne Haskins a real chance of being the guy here, and a consistent running game that keeps this defense fresh is the formula for the Redskins to be successful in 2020. There are a few spaces left on that draft bust bingo card for Darius Geis that are still looming. Let's hope that we don't see any of these go down. Running back is such a unique position, and this is such a unique season that it's going to be really interesting to see how it all plays out. I think I've made my stance pretty clear on how I feel like this could impact guys health-wise, preparation-wise, etc. But not to sit on the fence, it's probably going to have the reverse effect on some guys versus others. It's just another variable that we have to factor in that will impact the season, and we could see a lot of extremes this year. So before we move on to off-season story time and talk about the last few weeks or the last month in the world, please remember to hit that like button. Once again, the goal is 1,000 likes for each one of these breakout player position videos. Like I said, it's been a while since I've made a video, and YouTube likes to punish people that take extended time off. And to be honest, this section of the video is a large reason why it has taken me so long to upload another video. As I mentioned, I am biracial, and I spent time living in Texas, Michigan, Ohio, and Virginia, which has given me a pretty unique life experience. And as if 2020 hadn't already thrown enough at us, the death of George Floyd proved to be the final straw in what has been a long overdue mainstream recognition of the systematic racism that is ingrained in the history and the structure of this country. To put it into more football terms, have you ever been to training camp for your favorite football team and seen a rival fan show up decked out in team gear? Instead of getting openly booed, which is what good fan bases typically do, imagine being in that rival fan's shoes, but yet it's a completely silent version of that. That's what it's like for a person of color walking into a place that is dominated by white people. I actually had plans to get this video up in the first few days of June, but once this all started going down, I fell into a rabbit hole that involved watching the terrible clips of police brutality on innocent protesters. I was busy busy unfriending people from Facebook and watching a lot of impactful resources like the documentary 13th or the movie Just Mercy that, can I say, didn't get enough hype for how good it is. And I've been learning a lot about a culture that I probably should have been a lot more aware of, and a history that I was far too ignorant about. And I'm sure that this section of the video is going to cost me some subscribers, some followers, whatever, but that's okay, because guess what? A few years ago, we were all a little bit too uncomfortable to share an opinion that we all knew deep in our heart was the right one, because the louder side of the fence was the ones telling everybody to boycott the NFL for players kneeling and stuff. Well, get ready, because there is about to be a civil war among NFL fans this year. Not only is this going to be an odd NFL season, but with the kneeling involved also, it's going to be a circus. But yeah, hopefully you guys have been able to find what you're looking for during this time. I think that this has been a perfect storm of everyone having to be at home, plus the George Floyd situation. We didn't have any sports to watch to distract us, and we all had to sort of come face to face with the situation. And I was concerned and worried that it might die out by the time football season got here. But with the police brutality not cooling off, I don't anticipate that the Black Lives Matter movement will cool off itself. And I'm not anti-police, but my background before going all in on the NFL and social media and stuff was working as a medical health professional. So forgive me if I don't have the patience for somebody that has been assigned to safety. I have an issue with them not being able to keep their cool, but yet expecting the people that they have been assigned to deal with to keep theirs. But yeah, let me step down and apologize for going ghost after my mock draft. I did have every intention of continuing to upload once a week at least, but if I'm gonna do this YouTube thing, and I mean really do it year round, there's going to need to be a break season, and May will likely be that month every year, because right after the NFL draft, there's a 2-week span in May that has 6 important birthdays for me, including my own, my daughter's, both my parents. There's also Mother's Day, and then me and my wife's anniversary. So it's always been a pretty hectic couple of weeks there, and I came to the conclusion this year with these 3 kids that I have that it's just too much on my plate with literally nothing NFL wise happening. I'll probably be working on things behind the scenes and prepping for the upcoming NFL seasons, but the pressure of uploading weekly content is always gonna have to take a backseat to my family. I hope you guys will understand. Forgive me. Come back in June and continue to support me and this channel by watching, liking, commenting, subscribing. And I will see you all in the next video.